Hi everybody, my name is Jim Hemphill. I write about movies for IndieWire, and I'm very excited to welcome the filmmakers behind Strange Darling, writer-director JT Mollner, and cinematographer Giovanni Ribisi.
Thank you, Justin. Thanks, Jim. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Who's watching that?
Sorry.
That's probably way more interesting.
So I'm curious, I guess I want to start by going back to the origins of this collaboration between the two of you, because I know you're both pretty much like hardcore cinephile movie lovers, and I'm curious what the first conversations were like between the two of you. How did you meet? Were you guys bonding over shared cinematic reference points and influences or things like that?
Yeah, so I got invited to a dinner at the ASC Awards by president of Kodak at the time, Steve Bellamy.
He's here actually.
He's up
right
there.
there. You should be
Up
here.
there.
You should be down.
We've said Steve Bellamy so many times in interviews that we joke now that it's like a drinking game.
Yeah, you have to have a drink every time.
But he introduced us. We met at the table at the ASC Awards. I was maybe it was 6-7 years ago. I was very excited to meet Vonnie because I was a huge fan, and started talking to him about acting and if he'd do a movie of mine at some point or something. And then he said, I'm a cinematographer, and that's part of the reason I'm here. I love this. And so we started talking about the movies he liked and the movies I liked, and we had super aligned taste, and we both share a love for celluloid. And so we developed a friendship, and I went over to his shop to look at his equipment and the footage he'd shot, and he'd been doing this for so long, done so much great work, but he'd never done a feature. And so it was probably about 2 years after that, many nights of film dork friendship, like just kind of texting him, I just saw this movie, and him texting me back, I saw this movie, and we just, we really talked about movies all the time. I think it took like a few years before I found out anything about his family or his feelings about the world. We're friends now, we work together, but at the time it was sort of like every moment, all we talked about were movies, and so it led to this, which I'm quite happy with because he's a damn good DP. And yeah. And a good friend.
Well, Giovanni, I'm curious to hear about this kind of shop or facility you have that JT mentioned, because I know, it's the outside world, it's like, oh, this is your first feature. It's sort of like you've sprung out of nowhere as a cinematographer, but you've been working on this in essence for something like 15 years, right?
Yeah, 15 years ago, I had a visual effects company because I was really into computer graphic imaging, and I went to school for that. And my partners and myself ended up growing this company, and we were fortunate to be able to sell it. And I had a moment where I was able to stand back from my life and kind of reassess things, and honestly, it's just sort of like blindly just started following my nose towards camera work and building this shop that is just now more or less becoming just an accumulation of lighting junk over 15 years.
And so what was...
You want to talk about hoarding.
So one of the things about this movie that I think people love is, if you come into it cold, it's just completely surprising. It keeps shifting directions and forcing you to recalibrate what you're thinking. And I'm curious, JT, when you gave the script to Giovanni, what did you tell him? Did you tell him anything, or were you just like, here's my script, what do you think?
No, I knew he'd read it, thankfully, because he would. Well, I'd sent him other scripts of mine, and he'd given me feedback. He's also quite a good writer, and so I was reading stuff that he was writing, and he would read stuff that I'd written, and I kind of knew. I was hoping he might want to be involved in this and produce it and potentially shoot it. But I didn't have to pitch him because I knew if he liked it enough. I didn't want to ask and be turned down. I knew if he liked it enough, hopefully he'd just take the bait. But I just sent it to him. I remember saying, new one, just finished. Like it was something very, very simple, and it was called, I don't know, it was called something else at the time, and he read it very fast, which was very nice of him. But yeah, I gave him I didn't even tell him what type of movie it was, thriller. I didn't, genre, anything like that. I just sent it over.
I think it was in 15 minutes of finishing it, I called him and then I called him again because he didn't pick up, and then was begging him, and then it turned out he was at a birthday party, and I think it was his birthday party. And then we ended up talking for a half hour about it, and I was bothering him like that.
No, I remember it was exciting. It was kind of like it was one of those moments where when Stephen King liked the movie, or when Francis Lawrence liked the movie, or Shepard Fairey liked the movie, all these heroes of mine, and Sean Baker watched them. Every time somebody that I respected, admired, enjoyed the film, or gave us good feedback or whatever, is a miracle. And so with Giovanni, I respect him so much. And that night, it was my birthday that my wife and my mom were throwing for me out of town. My wife's here tonight, April. Hi, wife. I love you. But we, she was like, "What are you doing? Like, your guests are out here." And I was like, "Giovanni Ribisi's on the phone, and he's raving about the script." And she goes, "Oh, stay as long as you like," in the back room. And he really was freaking out about it. And I'd sent him probably, 7 or 8 things over the course of a few years. And so it was a very exciting night for me that somebody like him felt this way about the script and thought maybe there was a pathway to get it made ourselves, with his infrastructure and his equipment and us going out and sort of, scraping up the money trying to make a really low budget thing. And then after we decided we wanted to do it together, I sent it to my agent, who said, "Whoa, why did you send this to anybody else? Like, I think I might be able to get you a real budget for this, or low but real budget." And he sent it to Roy Lee. Roy Lee took it to Steven Schneider, and they took it to Miramax, and the whole thing happened very, very quickly. It was pretty crazy. And then I said, I want Giovanni Ribisi to be on this movie, and they're like, "Great, as an actor?" And I said, "No, he's an EP," and that was a weird conversation. And it was interesting because they really wanted him involved, but they were like, they had no idea it was a DP, so they were, that wasn't an easy. It was interesting. He actually had to earn his place on the movie, and it wasn't like he produced a movie and plugged himself in. Like, we had to convince a studio, financiers, to back him. And he was able to show proof that he was capable, the same proof that I'd seen.
Well, I've got to say, when the first time I saw the movie, I felt like within the first 5 minutes, I was like, this guy is an incredible DP. And I don't even remember if I knew it was Giovanni. I just was like, this thing looks amazing. It just was so original and so textured, and I just loved it. So I'm glad that you won that battle. I'm curious though, so I know that, even though you got a studio behind it and everything, it's still like a relatively modestly budgeted film for the ambition that you guys had. So
it's a low budget. Yeah, it was their lowest budget movie. Miramax was making $15, $20 million movies, $40 million, and this was by far. They said, we want to make one of those like A24 elevated thrillers that's under a few $1 million. I mean, they wanted to try something new, and yeah, so it was still a very low budget.
So what are some of the ways that you guys maximize your resources? Because it's not a movie that feels like you're straining against a budget or anything. It's very, very, fully realized.
Well, I would say a lot of that was just really in the prep and both, we were just so earnest for 4 or 5 months, put ourselves in a bubble together over the COVID, Zooming or coming together, watching movies. I think at one point, and this, my memory, I can't even believe this, but at one point I felt like we weren't allowed to get together. We were just doing it anyways, there was, because it was in the middle of COVID. And we...
yeah, it's been a few years.
It was really, the preparation, and we shot listed the movie, we made the movie on paper. It was a logistical shot list as well. It wasn't just about the creative vision from JT and all, but it was really elaborate. I mean, we just wanted to go in. I mean, we had so we're going to set it up to where we're going to allot ourselves 12 setups a day for for this specific location, because we've been there and we know that we can do that, and we're giving ourselves 10.5 hours. It was really elaborate.
Yeah, one of the benefits of Giovanni being producer and being committed to doing the film and investing his time and wanting to do it, because usually when you're doing a movie this size, it's kind of like the director and writer. I'm the only one who like will die for the movie, right? Usually. On this one, a few other people I could tell would die for the movie too, and Giovanni was one of them. And the great thing is he had this space, and he had this camera equipment, and he had, Kodak was being nice enough. Steve was running Kodak at the time, and they were helping us get film stocks to test and everything like that. And it was one of those scenarios where, on most low-budget movies, I will have to hire a DP who's going to be, great. I've had great experiences with all the DPs I've worked with. You hire a DP, and then you get like one day at Panavision to test your film stock or whatever, and you don't have access to those cameras all the time because the DPs usually don't own them. So with this situation, he totally threw himself into it and allowed us to use his resources to test and plan and all the things that I love to do, like planning ahead, to have always shot film, even though I started directing shorts when nobody was, and I've always found a way to do that. And when you shoot film, especially on low budget stuff, part of the process is planning and being meticulously in the end, and we love to do that. So we were able to just really get a lot of prep done that wasn't officially on budget.
It's an interesting thing, there was a part of me, this is gonna sound absurd, but I mean this, there was a part of me that wanted the budget to be even more compressed, almost as a test, to try to see what we could do, because I think that, and this speaks to why I think one of the reasons why we like celluloid is that we're in a society that's just so convenient. That's just used to that, just pushing a button and something, or walking into a room and turning on some lights, and there you're lit. And I think that there's a certain sort of, I wouldn't say struggle. I mean, definitely struggle for other reasons than celluloid on this. But there's a certain there's a lot of work that goes into that and planning, and I think that in any film that has that sort of commitment, you can see that or feel that sort of desperation in the DNA of the film. And so I think that's enough.
Well, and also, you talk about this meticulous planning, but then on a movie of this scale, there's always going to be things that are going to kind of get thrown at you on the day. I think one of you was telling me that you lost like your hotel room, the original hotel room location, very shortly before you were supposed to shoot. So I'm thinking, that's something you guys probably had very, very meticulous plan for, it now suddenly is out the window. So how do you roll with something like that?
I mean, that's the stuff I hate the most. Yeah, but you have to become good at it, and I do think we became very good at it, and I'm used to doing that on films, but I hate it because the planning part is the joy of the whole thing and knowing what you're about to do. And so yeah, Priscilla Elliott, our production designer, was very just ingrained in the mission statement of this movie, which was blood on the flower bed and primary colors and the colors we were using, and we really set out to control color and lock color and make sure every piece, it was supposed to take place in this pocket of the American West, when you're the Northwest, where you're driving, anybody who's driven across country, if you get off the interstate for just a little bit and you go into a restaurant or you go into a motel, there are pockets in this country that, except for the cell phones and the technology that you see here and there, haven't changed a whole lot in the last 40 or 50 years. And those areas were what fascinated me, this place kind of being trapped in a different time. And Priscilla, we went and found, with Priscilla's help, this place called Cooper's Spur Lodge that sort of looked a lot like this room does inside already. And she was going to dress it, but it had wood paneling and all this stuff, and it was just a beautiful location. We had hallways that we were going to use, and it was our overlook hotel, essentially. And they told us, not comparing any of us to Kubrick at all, just that location, but they told us at the last minute, there was a line producer on the movie who ended up getting relieved of his duties by the studio a little later, which was a good thing. But at the time, he said, we need to go to a different location. I just realized this location is outside of the zone for the unions. And so we're gonna have to pay a penalty, or it's gonna take too long. So I was livid, and he made us go to a different hotel that looked like a travel lodge or a Holiday Inn. I mean, it was white walls, it was very modern, there was no elegance to it or romance to it. And the interesting thing is that hotel ended up being outside of the zone too.
Right.
So it was, I mean, it
when
just,
they were like, oh, we need to have a conversation.
yeah, so thankfully they corrected that error, but once we got in there, I went in there with Priscilla, and Giovanni and Priscilla were trying to be a little bit more positive. That was the one day I think it just got to me. I remember walking out, in the back there's a golf course outside of this hotel. I'm like, this isn't what we're looking for. We're Twin Peaks. And so I'm walking around the golf course, and I'm like, somebody give me like a bottle of whiskey or something. And then Priscilla comes over, and Giovanni was part of this conversation, and was like, listen, we can do this. If we need to do this, we can do this. We can bring the Cooper Spur over here, and we need some time. We need a couple days. We went and asked for a couple days, and they gave her 14 hours.
Yeah, it was something like that. She had 14, something like that on a Sunday, staying up all night and putting it together. But what's interesting?
Every inch of that room. Every inch of that room is art department. Priscilla Elliott. Every inch of it. There's nothing original, and that happened in
paint, the wood paneling, and everything. But it was interesting because I think one of the point is you spend 6 weeks prepping a location, building a set. You have 12-foot ceilings that you can put lights up and do all that. And then within 14 hours, you've got to figure out how to work with truly.
Well, yeah, it was a tiny.
Yeah,
that was the thing. You had to change the lens choices. Yeah. That was another thing. You had to really pivot.
Yeah. But for JT as well, and you spend almost a year. From if you're including the writing, more than that, building a world and in your head and on paper and the whole thing, and right up to 14 hours before you get the phone call. Yeah.
Something else I'm curious about is I noticed in the end credits you thanked Tiffany Haddish, and I remember you said something. I heard you say something somewhere that like Tiffany Haddish got you Final Cut or something. I'm curious what that story is.
That was a reduced. It's not exactly that simple, but she definitely contributes to. So Steve Bellamy introduced me to Tiffany Haddish about I don't know, a year ago or a year and a half ago or something like that.
This guy
we should all take a drink.
Yeah. But I met Tiffany on this trip. A bunch of creatives were on in Hawaii, and we ended up talking there, and it just turned out Tiffany and I became sort of friends, and it turned out that Steve had been telling her about the movie, and right when I was in a place where we had submitted the cut, and we were hoping that I didn't have final cut. Very few directors do. So it was in a weird place where we submitted the cut, and there were some people who thought it was too confusing out of sequence, and I was terrified that I was going to be forced to put this movie in sequence. And they actually had very nicely had one of the executives had brought a friend who was an editor to do something without my knowledge, and then they showed it to me. And I didn't like it, and I was like, I don't want to be difficult, but how am I going to tell them this movie can't play in sequence? Because in sequence it becomes sort of gratuitous, offensive, in the worst way possible, and it also becomes conventional. And so I was telling the story to Tiffany in Hawaii, and I was like, I think they're going to make me do this, and I don't know what to do. And she said, I'm in kind of negotiation with them right now. Like I might be doing some stuff with them, and I know Bill Block well, and I have their ear. I have their ear over there. And I said, well, would you just put in a word? And she's like, well, I have to see the fucking movie. So then I knew I had to convince her to watch the movie. So once we were back in LA, she came. She did what she said she'd do. She came to the editing room, and we watched the movie, and she was reacting a lot like many of you were tonight. She was yelling at the screen during the film, and laughing at the right spots, and just really had fun with it, even though it's some moments aren't very fun. But she went on the roller coaster ride, and afterwards she's like, I love this movie. And then I found out later that she had during some discussions with the higher ups in Miramax, she told them how much she loved the movie, and I know that was definitely helpful. So in the end, Bill Block, who financed the movie or greenlit the movie, he also had gone to a test screening of the movie after talking to Tiffany and all that, and we watched it together with a test audience. There was a room about this size, and after the screening, he was like, JT, like, I get this movie now, I love this movie, it's, I really think we're gonna find an audience, and he did a very kind thing, which is, he told me, I don't want to studio-wise your film, like, we're gonna be fine cut. So, for better or for worse, the cut you're seeing now is definitely the one I wanted you to see. A lot of gratitude to Bill and his movie is really.
Well, it's such an audacious movie, and I wonder for you guys, like, on one hand, I know you both obviously believed in this thing a lot, but when it is as audacious as this is, I mean, you've also got to have some kind of insecurity or fear, like, is this going to play, is what we see in this going to actually have this effect on an audience? And obviously, like, people seem to be loving it, and I'm curious, when did you guys know what you had? Like, when did you kind of relax a little and say, okay, this thing really works?
Well, it's weird. I always knew it worked, like, for me, but that doesn't always mean it's going to work for any of you, right? Or any critics or anybody else. So, in the editing room after we did the assembly, when we got the director's cut, I thought it definitely was working for me, and that's the first thing I have to do. But then I was thinking, this movie could really be received poorly. Like everything I do, there's influenced by people like David Cronenberg. Everything I do is meant to pose questions and divide sometimes, and make people think and just feel weird things, crazy things, and uncomfortable things. And so people who don't know me personally and don't always know where I'm coming from, who just walk into this movie, I don't know how they're going to react to it. And so I expected it to be more divisive than it's been so far, which has been really great. It seems like most people who see it are getting where we're coming from and getting what we're trying to play with, and we're coming from a good place beneath all the ugliness, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was that first test screening that I don't know if there's ever the sense of like, oh, we've got something, that specific thought or idea or feeling, but I think we had. And I was watching sort of from afar JT getting just beat down and going through and seeing his movie put in chronological order and all of that. And I think when we showed up to the test screening in the lobby, we really had our tails between our legs. I mean, it was really, we were almost, just like hoping that I don't know what. And I think people started coming up to him from Miramax that we had never met, and they were saying such fans of the movie, and they didn't feel like they were allowed to say that. And then we went in, and it was just kind of like a sort of, you're at the end of your rope, and then people started responding and talking to the movie out loud, and it was surreal, and then
Yeah, there were people who came up at that test screening, people we hadn't met, like some of the younger execs at Miramax who we all, we've met them all now, but at the time they were like, I actually like this movie.
Actually.
Oh God. And we were just trying at that point. We were trying to avoid the iTunes graveyard. We wanted this movie to play in theaters, and the fact that we've gone from there to here, where you're all sitting and you're watching this, it's just the level of gratitude. It's pretty crazy. It's been a really amazing week.
It's an interesting thing, though, really quickly going back to the story, the non-chronological, chronological version. I mean, everything has sequence to it. Every story has sequence. You look at Joseph Campbell, for instance. Obviously the hero's journey is about a sequence, and I think that as opposed to being a gimmick, or because what's interesting is a few people have seen it several times. Obviously people that have worked on it, and it truly is still an experience that resonates a second and a third viewing, because it's not just founded on that, but it speaks to the nature of the film, that the film is really, there's no other version of this film, you know, and the chronology is really, for me personally, an emotional journey that hits the hero's journey in that you know, chronology. I don't know how many times I'm gonna say chronology is one thing.
You guys want to see the linear version?
Yeah.
Well, so Giovanni, this is kind of, you know, a culmination of everything you've been working toward, and then I guess also, in a way, a new beginning. It's your first feature as cinematographer. So, I mean, how are you feeling right now, you know, about, I guess, just your future as a cinematographer? I mean, did this sort of supercharge your excitement about it even more than it already was? Was it?
Sure, yeah. As hard of an experience as this was for both, I mean, if it's okay if I speak for you know, for both of us. No, it's a long part. I can say that both of us couldn't wait to get to work the next day. Because there was just an idea that, you know, as much as people are, whatever they're saying, you know, we feel like we were succeeding with that shot list. You know, we were executing it and making our days and looking at dailies and you know, so that I think, you know, I love movies and I love you know, I love shooting movies, and so yes, I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, the love you guys have for filmmaking is really evident in this, and it's really infectious. And I really appreciate you both coming out to talk to us about it. I know there's another movie that's coming here, so I'll wrap this up. Thank you guys.
Thanks, man. Yeah. Anybody would have come to the Vista?